In this video, I'm going to talk about using featured images or post thumbnails in your template files. Now, why the different names? Well, they were originally called post thumbnails, and then their use started to be expanded and their role increased, and they now are called featured images. In fact, if we go over to a WordPress post here, and this applies to pages too, you'll see down here, featured image. That's how they're actually displayed to the user. But in the back end, we still refer to them as post thumbnails because all of the functions that were written were originally called post thumbnails, so they're still called that. And the beauty of featured images is that it allows the user to choose which image is going to be counted as the featured image. Now, whether a theme makes use of featured images or not is totally up to the theme writer. So a user could choose a featured image, but if it's not being used anywhere, then it's not going to show up. And the beauty, of course, too, is that the user can change the featured image at any time without having to touch the coding at the back end. All right, it's very important to remember that you have to include the functionality for post thumbnails or featured images in your functions.php file. You have to activate them. And you do it with this add theme support function. And you just use the name post thumbnails in there. And that will get the ball rolling. Now, if you're using a child theme, and as I always say, you should be using child themes, check to see if the parent theme had already called this in the functions.php file. If it had already started the support for this, you don't need to do it again. The other thing you'll want to do in functions.php is set a default for this post thumbnail. And you do it with this right here, the set post thumbnail size. Now there are two versions of this. This version resizes the image to fit the width and the height that you specify there. The other version, which you see has true on the end of it, what this does is it literally crops the image to the width and the height. So it'll take it from the right or the top or wherever it's going to take it, and it'll actually shrink it. It'll crop the image. Again, be sure to check what the parent has done. You can override that setting, but check to see what the parent theme is doing. And you'll see in 2010, the default theme, that it in fact sets this image size. So you want to be aware of that, and you might get some funny things happening because you didn't know you'd set the default thumbnail size. Now, you're not limited to that. So even if you have this in your functions.php file, you can create additional ones. And I'm checking here first of all, it's always good to do this in your functions.php, check to see that the function actually exists. Can this version of WordPress support add image size in this case? And if it does, then do these two things. Now I'm doing another one. This is the resizing one. And you'll notice I'm using 4 nines here. That's for the height. And what it's saying is make it whatever height it wants, so it'll be proportional. But the width has to be 300. Now I'm going to use a cropped version here, which says make it exactly 220 by 180 and crop the image. And I'm giving them names. Notice that. I give them a name right here and right here. And that's what I call later, when I want to see the post thumbnail of this particular size, I just put the name in here. Homepage-thumb, and it will use this sizing here instead of this sizing here. One thing to keep in mind, if you've been going for a while with a blog or a website and you add image size later, it will not have affected thumbnails prior to that. It's only the ones moving forward. So it can be an issue if you're coming in on a project and there's already material on the database. Now there are plugins that will go back and recreate the thumbnails for you using the add image size. So keep that in mind when you're using this feature. Now, how do we call post thumbnails in our loops? And you'll most often use them in a loop because it's referring to a post. You can use them outside the loop, but you're going to have to do a query first and get a hold of a post. You need something that has an ID. Well, in our loop, what we should do first is check to see if the post or the page even has a thumbnail. And if it does, then we simply show it. Again, we could choose maybe from one of the 3 default sizings within WordPress, or again, if we created one of those add image sizes, we could use that here as well, just plugging it right in as a parameter for the post thumbnail. So let's take a look at this in action here. Again, we check to see, does it have a thumbnail? Does it have a post thumbnail? Then in this case, I'm actually going to put it in a div so that I can more easily manipulate it. So I just create the div around it. I put in my call to a specific image size, and then I close off my conditional. So this way it will go and find if there is a thumbnail, it'll make it this size, put it in this div, and then I do whatever I want with my styling. It's that simple to use post thumbnails, a very powerful little tool, and clients love it because they've got control over this featured image or post thumbnail, and they do it, they can change it, do whatever they want with it.